Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I'll be your host once again. Joining me on the show today, I got another special guest all the way across the pond in England, Darren Quinn. Darren has had a career in technical training for Jaguar, Land Rover, and also Audi. And he's currently running a training website, Mechanic Mindset. He's going to tell us all about that, but make sure to check the show notes for the link. He also has a YouTube channel, which goes along with his training website. But this is going to be focused around vehicle diagnostics and oscilloscope training. Lots of stuff on the Pico. We talk about Pico 7. We'll talk about training in the automotive industry. Really great chat. I love getting to talk to people in other parts of the world that are doing the same or similar things as us here in the States. Really interesting to see different perspectives on this. But I enjoyed this talk. Hopefully you as well. But with that out of the way, let's jump right in.
Well, the only reason I asked, I've got two dogs, and
I got one too.
Yep. So one might pipe up in a minute. He's going a bit deaf, so my wife will come through the door. He won't hear, but then the other one might start downstairs. So yeah, it should be all right.
What kind of dogs you got?
So I got a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
My parents used to have two of those, actually.
Right, yeah. So he's under the desk right now. He just sleeps there in the day. He's 9. And then we've got a flat coat retriever who's 9 months. So he's like
full of energy.
Bouncing, massive ball of energy at the minute. So he's currently downstairs chewing on some sort of animal bone.
Yeah, hopefully that and not furniture or something like that.
Yeah. He's pretty good like that, to be honest. But you know how these young dogs are. They're just a bit unpredictable sometimes. you got to have an outlet for that energy. I have a black lab, and she's 9 now, so she's finally starting to not be a puppy. But if you don't have an outlet for the energy, they just become destructive and rambunctious. So you got to have something for them to do. Yeah, I don't know how many blankets he's eaten now. He just sits there chewing them, swallows it, and then
Yeah, it's funny. We got these toys that have the little plastic squeakers inside of them. And her favorite thing to do is to get one of these toys. And her immediate goal is to tear it apart and get the squeaker out. So I'm equating that to if it was like a squirrel or something, she'd be just ripping the heart right out of it. And then she's happy. She's like, I'm done with this toy now that I've killed it.
Yeah, sounds about right for retrievers. Yeah, I get the same.
Well, thanks for joining me this morning. Well, it's this afternoon where you're at, and this morning where I'm at, Darren. How's everything going for you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so quite exciting time for me, really, career-wise. So I'm currently with Jaguar Land Rover, and we look after all their global technical training, development, and delivery and stuff. So, and I'm actually working my notice there. So in the middle of February, I am going freelance. So working for myself and doing a few different things, got a few exciting opportunities coming up. So, but yeah, eight years at Jaguar Land Rover now, and that's, it's been pretty good. Okay.
And did you do the same thing the whole time you were there? Were you a technician for those vehicles?
No. So I suppose my background. So when I was 16, I got an apprenticeship, and in the UK, I'm not sure if it's the same over your side, but in the UK, when you're 16, you can leave school. It's kind of changed a bit now. And I went into a full-time job at a BMW dealer, in an apprenticeship, and we do like 2-week blocks throughout the year for your like college, your schooling.
Okay.
So that's what I did for, I suppose, my serve time, if you like. And I was on the workshop floor there for 9 years, going through their kind of the usual dealer kind of curriculum of learning and stuff. Your levels, like your service tech, your diagnostic tech.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2010, I started working at Audi UK, as a technical trainer.
Okay.
So that was quite a jump, actually, from being a technician who thinks you've got your finger on the pulse and, you know pretty much, most things you need to know.
Right.
So then standing in front of a group of, 9 to 12 guys who have probably been working for that brand for, years. And I've rarely ever touched an Audi. Training, so that was a big kind of learning curve there.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, it was quite good. Got into it quite quickly, but I was thinking, what am I doing? I don't like standing up and talking in front of people, I don't even like it when they do that thing on a course and they go around the room and ask your name. I still don't like that. I've been training for like 13 years. So, that was good. And I was there for 4 years and kind of worked up there quite quickly from, they usually start you in at the bottom doing like basic electrics and the service and maintenance courses and stuff. And then they'll bring you on to the other stuff like the systems training, like diesel, petrol, infotainment. And I left there looking after the master technician program. So that was really good. What they used to do there was they'd bring the guys in for like 2 weeks, and you'd have these guys. I think we only had a maximum. I think it was four or five. So you just work with these, say it was four technicians for 2 weeks, and we'd basically just go through diagnostic process. So we'd put a fault on the car, send them down. Okay, this is what the customer concern is. Go at it. And, we'd pretend to be like the customer, and they could ask questions and stuff. And
sure.
And then that would allow us then to go into other areas. So say if we put an intermittent misfire fault on, it might then bring up questions about, GDI fuel systems. So then we go, right, okay, we can spend some time talking about that now. So it was really good because you got 2 weeks of just a really flexible kind of schedule of what you were going to talk about.
Okay.
So, that was pretty good. So you was writing some courses for them as well and a few things like that. So
while you were doing that, you were working with technicians that were actually fixing vehicles, or who was the person or the people doing the diagnosing on the car?
Yeah, the dealer technicians.
Okay.
So a lot of these dealers now, all these brands, they have targets they've got to meet for the I suppose the qualification levels of their technicians. Yeah. So say they've got a main dealer, I can't remember what it was exactly, but say they've got 15 technicians. Okay, if a dealer's got 15 technicians, they've got to have so many service technicians, so many diagnostic technicians, and so many master technicians. So it might be like you need to have one master tech per 10 technicians. So they were the guys that were coming in really. Just technicians. And it was good because you'd have probably seen them, having been there a few years, you'd have seen them on other courses as they're kind of coming through.
Okay.
And you may have assessed them on the kind of the next level down, the diagnostic technician level, and then, really helping them come up through into that kind of master tech role and, working with them. But it's good because, I think in that role, you lose touch of what's actually happening and what actual faults people are kind of getting in the workshops. Whereas the training side of thing is, this is how it works and this is what should happen if,
if everything
if you get
is
a blockage
perfect
here or if you take this off here. And but faults don't happen like that, do they?
Yeah. It doesn't work that way in the real world. Definitely. You can be so smart on the technical side of things. You could be the smartest person out there, And the real world and real cars in service are going to throw you a curveball. That service info, or everything about how it works, but something's going to happen and it's not going to make sense, and you still got to figure your way around that. And so, like you were saying, with a process, having a diagnostic process is going to help you get there. What did you see doing that was the most common hang up for technicians as far as the process goes?
So I was introduced to a full diagnostic process course while I was at Audi, and delivered it quite a lot. And it was like a 6-step process. You see all these different types of processes everywhere, but they all kind of come to the same thing. And I think, especially when it comes to those intermittent faults and those, hard to replicate, and the comebacks, the ones that have already been fixed before and it's come back again, it's all in that front end. So, making sure you're asking the right questions, gathering the right evidence. So, history, whether it's accident damage or, whatever's been done on it before. Other things like function tests. A really good function test can actually help you, really narrow down where a fault is. That also comes with a big understanding of how the system works. So, good advice is really to just test everything. Okay. And note it down, and, because we all do those faults, don't we? And then at the end of it, you're like, that's why that wasn't working.
Yeah.
Because you've been through and tested the whole system and got to the end and realized that those two things shed an earth. And you're like, right, okay, if I'd tested that first and looked at that in the beginning, I could have saved myself, an hour stripping out the whole car or something.
Yep. Well, asking questions too, man, is that important? Actually, this morning before we did this, I went to a shop that was close to my place to program a PCM on a Ford Escape. And I do lots of Fords, and I'm pretty familiar with the process. And so when I got to the shop, I watched the technician pull the vehicle in with the old PCM plugged in, and he pulls it in the bay, and I get to work, and I do the programming event, and I do the anti-theft for the keys. And once I'm done, it won't crank. You turn the key and nothing happens. And I immediately assume I missed something, or maybe the new PCM has a fault. So I'm dinking around, I'm messing around. I'm like, everything, seems correct. I'm wondering if it's this PCM, and I probably wasted about 15 minutes of my time trying to figure out why this thing wouldn't crank. And I'm assuming because I saw them drive in the vehicle that it cranked before. I just assumed that. And I never asked the technician. And finally, before I really got into it and started pulling out my test equipment, I asked the tech, I'm like, did you guys have any issues with this cranking? And he's like, oh yeah, the ignition housing is worn out. It's pretty common on those Escapes. And you really got to push that key in while you're turning it to get it to crank. That's what he did. He knew about that when he pulled it in. And had I asked right away, I would have saved myself 15 minutes of time, not dinking around with this car. But that's exactly it. You gotta question. And sometimes as a technician, that's tough because you're relying on the person up front, the service writer, or who's interacting with the customer, get that information, and you're getting it secondhand. And boy, that can really hang you up sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of these, I suppose for the main dealer world in which I've been involved in for a while, that's been a call center. So it's someone with not even stepped foot in the dealership before.
Sure.
Maybe have no experience in actually cars or anything like this. And, they may have been doing call center for an insurance company that, before they got this job. So, yeah, they might not always ask the right questions or any at all. They just put them in, and the customer comes in on the morning, just drops the keys off. There you go.
Yeah.
The technician's there. They've got the fault on the thing. We've all been there, haven't we? Yeah. And those jobs, they get turned back out the door. Need more information or need road tests with customer or So yeah, questions is a big one for diagnostics, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I think it really helps as well towards creating or preventing comebacks. Really, is nailing that cause I think a lot of the time we can always be guilty of, fixing the fault and actually not questioning again why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and what I find is you have to go back to that information from the front end, like that history, the customer questioning, your function tests, and just the usual checks that you'd do, if it's had a windscreen fitted, or if it's had some body work, or if a technician's already been in there, we will usually know the things to look out for, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of piecing all that together, and detective work, really.
Exactly. Yeah. Finding out, how many times has this PCM been replaced on this thing, for the same issue? Okay, maybe something's taking it out, but yeah, you gotta dig for that stuff.
Yeah. So there was a really good example of that. I did a video actually on it, and it was just on, I think it was a story. We didn't go into the story too much on the video. It was just about the background of this kind of thing that happens. So it was a colleague of mine, when I'd got into the training, they said that when he was in the dealer, he had this car and it came in. Apparently they'd been on holiday and they'd broken down, and then roadside recovery had come out and kind of got them going again. Mm-hmm. So it'd come in and it was not running. Long story short, they diagnosed it down to a PCM, and they put the PCM, so the engine control unit, on it, and there we go, it's fired up and it's all going again. So I think it was like, a short time after that, it came back again, the same problem. Now I don't know whether they actually put another PCM on it, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did. Let's just say they did. Mm-hmm. However, what happened is in that first instance, when the roadside guy got them going again, the original fault was a fuel pump relay.
Okay.
Yeah? So the roadside guy's just gone into the back of his van and just, grabbed out any old relay, that'll do.
Sure.
Put them in, yeah. And it's a different relay, and it hasn't got any surge protection on it. Mm. So this relay then has been, turning off, creating this big spike, going back up to the engine control module and knocking it out. So
interesting. Okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it had 2 control units before someone said, hang on a minute. That's not normal.
Right. Yeah, finding that root failure or the root cause of the problem. And sometimes that's tricky. I mean, that would be a challenging one to find, especially right off the bat. I mean, the first time you put that PCM in, okay, well, it's done. Let's put one in. That is going to be tricky to find, but that's what we're up against, stuff like
going
that.
Going back to that information again, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. And you're not always going to get that out of the customer.
No.
The customer's always going to be honest that, their dad, their mate, and the garage around the corner has already had a look at it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not always.
Yeah. And I've found too, especially with a customer, they don't know what information is relevant. So you really have to press in certain situations to get, because they may know the piece of information that you're looking for that will help you, but they don't think it's relevant to what you're dealing with, and understandably so. Like they don't know. Most customers don't know, how all this stuff works. I've when I was a tech, we had some interview sheets that we would provide the service writers to help out when, like, I couldn't directly talk with the customer, or I was busy, so they could give them a sheet. And there's variations of this out there. I know you can find them online. But it was just an in-depth questionnaire, about the problem, and really asking questions like, how long has this been going on? How often does it happen? What are the driving conditions? Cold, hot, ambient temperature, up a hill, all this stuff. And those would be very helpful, because then you had it firsthand from the customer in writing. And it would get you around some of that for sure.
Yeah, when it's happening, that's a really important one. It could be time of day, it could be location that the customer's not actually thought about linking. Mm-hmm. Could be a short circuit problem on a fog light, and the fog lights don't come on very often. So there's your intermittent failure. Mm-hmm. How often is it foggy, and how likely is it that the technician's going to replicate that on a nice sunny day? Not going to think about turning all these things on and putting the car in the condition that the customer is experiencing the fault. So yeah, it can get tricky.
Yeah, going for a drive with customer is sometimes the answer on that intermittent stuff. I had it was just a noise diagnostic, just something, which actually those can be really challenging sometimes. Noise diagnostics can actually be really tricky for certain noises, but it was supposed to be a front end clunk or something in the front end was loose of this Ford, and we couldn't duplicate it. Like we couldn't hear it. We couldn't make it happen. We're driving it all over. And finally we got the customer there, and he drives the vehicle and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and he rolled the window down on the driver's side. And once he rolled the window down, the weather stripping that was there and you had to get above a certain speed, but the wind was causing the weather stripping to slap against the top of the door. That was his noise that he interpreted as a front end noise. Right. And we never drove it with the window down, so we never found it. And sometimes that is the key, is to have them there with you. I had a guy too. We were trying to find, I think that was a noise too. And we were driving this thing, couldn't get it to do it. And I went for a drive with this guy, and I was scared for my life. He was driving this car so aggressively, like he was going to go try out for NASCAR or something, going around these corners. And the car did make the noise when you drove it like that. But, I'm not out there beating a customer vehicle up like that. But he was. No. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we're after then.
we don't get a choice to put ourselves in these situations sometimes either, do we? You just, awakened a memory in me as well. Like I worked in Dubai for a little bit. Okay. So during my time in the workshop, I took a year out. I think I was still kind of youngish. I was like 23. And my mate seen an ad in the paper for technicians in Dubai. So, I took it up. It was a BMW independent. Anyway, so you go out with a road test for a road test with the guys out there. Most of them have got, their cars are pretty powerful. We're talking BMW as well. So they're, they've got some money over there, and, they're serious machines. Yeah. The roads are good. They're smooth, but the people that are on them are varying degrees of, driving capabilities. Sure. And then you go out and road test with some of these guys. They've got no seatbelt on. So they've got, they've bought a seatbelt and cut off the little, the thing that goes in, and then put that in to stop the warning going off. Yeah? Okay. And I had this one guy, and not long before that, his friend had died in a car he was driving. I think it was like a Nissan Patrol. They did silly things with like Skyline engines in or something. Okay. And he's crashed his car and rolled it, and his friend has been ejected from the passenger side window during the roll, and he died. And it's pretty serious stuff. And he was a young lad, and then he's come for a road test or something with he had a 645, I remember, so a V8 6 Series. And I go out with him, same again, no seatbelt on. He's just got the thing in the buckle to stop it from going off, and he's driving like an idiot. And he's like, what are you doing? Chill out. But so many times out there, they were really scary drivers, almost like they had something to prove to me. Okay. So, but
yeah, that's that is the thing about being a young male, is it's very typical to drive like an idiot. And I know I did the same thing. I drive so much more passively and slower than I used to when I was a young kid. But I think actually being a technician and driving customer vehicles kind of helped me out with that, because, I don't want to risk getting into an accident or something like that with a customer vehicle, obviously. Yeah. And so you drive them very carefully and very passively. And I think that actually kind of transferred over to my own driving eventually after I did it for years and years.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm the same really. So the driving thing's a little different over here. So I think you guys can get driving quite young, and it's quite, do you do it as part of school or something? Is it? It's,
you can take a course as driver's ed, or you can just there's a written test to get your permit, and then you go and take your driving test. So you don't necessarily have to take the course, but it's recommended.
Okay.
It's 16 over here. Is it the same age in the UK?
It's 17.
Okay.
17 here.
Gotcha.
So, however, it's down to you, and they don't do it as part of the school or anything. So, you know, you can only do it if you can afford it, your driving school. So, I was 19 when I passed. And I probably only ended up taking my lessons because one of the technicians I worked with made a career move into driving school. And as part of that, he had to practice, and I got free driving lessons out of it.
Nice.
But like you say, when I passed then at the age of 19, I was allowed to drive any of the cars that came into the workshop. I was expected to drive them.
Sure.
And yeah, I wasn't driving fully myself by then. And now I'm like out on the road in these cars that are like, tens of thousands of pounds, and you've got to be careful and treat them good.
Yeah.
And you never know who's watching.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
A friend of mine got caught in a customer's car on the motorway. He was in my apprenticeship group. He was in an M3 and he got caught speeding because the customer had a tracker on the car.
Oh, okay.
So why are you driving up the M4 at 120 mile an hour in my car?
Jeez.
He's just like, so yeah, you got to be careful. But
yeah, no kidding.
Not worth it.
So you mentioned you had a video that you recorded recently. You've got a YouTube channel and I believe a website. Do you want to tell me and the listeners all about that?
Yeah. So it's Mechanic Mindset on YouTube. I started that actually, did that first video just when the coronavirus kind of pandemic hit, really. So it's something that I wanted to do for a while. In my job at JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, it was going more of a kind of a management way, away from kind of working with the technology and the training and technicians. So, and I wanted to keep that alive in me because really enjoy it. So yeah, I started Mechanic Mindset, focusing a lot on just trying to make diagnostics easy. Really, it's too easy for us as trainers and people who have been in the game for a long time to really go straight into kind of the deep end. And what I found at Audi training master technicians is that the fundamentals is the most important thing. So that's what I started doing there. It's doing pretty good, getting a lot of good feedback. It takes a lot of time to make these videos, but I really do enjoy doing them. I've got a big list of videos that I want to do, but it's just kind of getting around to it.
Sure.
And now, we've got the website as well. So I've started writing my own training. So we've currently got a picoscope and oscilloscope course available. So that's it's like an online course, so it's available to anyone, and it's designed to be more of a you could either go through it from beginning to end, or it's a I'm on the job, I've got this scope in front of me. I remember they said something about using it to diagnose canvas. Let's have a look. And then you'll go there. There's like a short video just to kind of remind you where to go. So that's really exciting and got some amazing feedback on that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I saw there was a bunch of stuff, oscilloscope videos that you had, whether it be Pico or something else. And did you work a lot with scopes as far as you were saying Audi and then the JLR? Do they have that stuff available for technicians? Is there training for dealer technicians on that stuff?
Yeah. So at BMW, they had it as part of the dealer tool. It was kind of a basic scope. It had all your usual settings like your trigger and stuff, and you could do longer time bases and things. There might have been some other things on there, but the interface on the actual thing was quite basic. However, the equipment that it came with was actually very capable. It was very high spec equipment. So, you had one amp clamp, and as far as I remember, it did everything, from battery drains to, high current kind of draws.
Nice.
So if I remember it right, it was a long time ago. Volkswagen was similar. So actually the oscilloscope display actually looked pretty much the same. And yeah, the training there is there for them. However, I think the big thing with the dealer training is it's having those examples to draw on to really get the most of that, oscilloscope diagnostic. So like I remember, doing the petrol classes, and, we've got an injector waveform on the display. It's like, well, that's great, So what? What am I going to do with that information now? How can I use this tool to help me? So in a lot of cases, it was being used as a way to explain the theory of how something worked.
Okay.
Rather than how to use it to diagnose things. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I started at JLR, they use picoscope. So I'm not sure if it's mandated in both brands. It certainly is on one of them. However, that's the tool of choice for if they were going to go and do some oscilloscope testing. So yeah, I kind of had to use that, of course. We didn't really get into my JLR background, but when I started there, I was delivering Train the Trainer. So that's where the kind of dealers, they go out and, the factory, they go out and train all the academies, basically. So we had people come to us, and sometimes we went to them, like in China or USA and things like that.
All right.
So yeah, I had to get to grips with using that picoscope and its software. So I think because of where I'd come from and the scope I was used to, I was just quite happy with using, the time, voltage, trigger settings and things like that, and never really got digging into what that thing could really do. Mm-hmm. And when I did, you really find out how much of a powerful kind of tool and software it is. So, and then you start looking around on YouTube and all these kind of different things that you can actually do with it, and just joining up those bits of knowledge that I'd gained in technical training, fundamentals, and then, okay, well, what can we see on the scope with this,
Yeah.
So, yeah, really kind of ran away with it a bit.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with that Pico. It's pretty cool. Yeah. What do you think of Pico 7? They're starting to straighten that out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I opened it, I was like, ooh. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a change, isn't it? It's like using something brand new.
Yep.
So it took a while, and I didn't really go back to it much. So much so that in November 2019, I started writing the picoscope for automotive course I've got. I did the whole thing in picoscope 6.
Oh, okay.
And then the announcements start coming out, late end of last year. It's like, okay, we're turning off picoscope 6 next year. It's not even going to be available for download. And we're like, oh.
Yep.
But the good thing is that everything that you've learned in picoscope 6 can be transferred over to picoscope 7. It's just knowing where it all is now.
Yeah.
I actually had a call with one of the technical support guys from Picoscope week before last. Randy, his name is. So if you send a support ticket in, it's going to be Randy or one of the other few guys in the UK that will answer it. That's Picoscope Automotive. And we had a really good chat about Picoscope 7, where it's come from, why they've had to do it. And I suppose to just let us know that they're listening. Yeah, mm-hmm. So they're hearing the gripes people are having. Of course, it's not finished yet, so I'm not going to be going all in with it for my training until they're finished with it, because there are still some more features to come, mm-hmm. and I don't want to write some more stuff where it's going to be obsolete again soon.
Right.
However, the Pico 6 is on. It was developed around Windows XP.
Okay.
13 years ago. It was on an old framework. It's not secure, so we've got our details in there, for the waveform library, and apparently there's people pecking away at their servers every day trying to get in at that information.
No kidding.
Huh. That's why they're kind of making a fast move to get the waveform library off Pico 6.
Interesting.
Because it's a full-time job to keep that data secure at the minute.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reasons that are this change has to happen. But then there's the other ones where they've got an opportunity to do something different. Mm-hmm. When I don't know if you remember when you first opened up Picoscope 6. Can you remember what it was like? Or
yeah, I just remember there was a lot of things that you could click on, and it took some time to sort through everything and realize what each one of them meant. You know what I mean? Like, what's this tab? What are these numbers here?
That's it.
It took some time for sure.
Yeah, I hated it at first, because I was used to the dealer tools that I mentioned that were similar layout to what you've got on Picoscope 7, where you've got a touch screen and you just like, right, yeah, there's the time, there's the voltage, and there's the, triggers and whatever. They were basic, but it was all kind of there on the screen, whereas this was like, where do I start it? How do I stop it?
Yeah.
It's like tiny little icon.
Yeah, right down in the bottom.
So, they were saying that, Picoscope 6 is a test and measurement tool first for like electrical engineers. The automotive thing was a side gig, but now it's kind of, it's got a lot bigger. So they had an opportunity to kind of do something different. Get rid of all those hidden functions where you had to go into the top menu or right click, or, bring some more clarity to those other options that we've got on the screen, like sample rate and the measurements. What half of them measurements mean,
Right.
Does everyone know what edge count means? If you're new to it, it's going to be like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
right.
We've got visual things for that now. So
Nice.
That's pretty good. I've made like a little mini course actually to kind of help people get going with it.
Oh, okay.
So it will just go through the features and just to kind of help those people that are on Pico 6 make the move, because it's inevitable. We're going to have to do it at some point or later.
Yeah,
sooner or later.
Because I've got the same thing. I have a section for my students where we introduce scopes, and we have Picos for the school so that they can work with them. I think that once somebody instructs you on the function, they're very user friendly. Like once you figure out 6, it was very user friendly, and the students figure it out pretty quickly. But like you were mentioning, my presentation and all the stuff I have is off of 6. So this year again, I'm switching over and going to be doing 7 for next year. But it's a huge tool for technicians, and I think for people learning electricity too, students who are new to this stuff, just to have that visualization, that graph of what's happening, because you can't see electricity, but with the scope you kind of can, and it draws a picture for you. And you got to get it set up, and you got to understand the connections and that stuff, and the different probes and all of that. And that's the training that you need. But once you figure some of that stuff out, I think it really gives some clarity, or just that you got to have that picture in your head of something. I talked about this with Fonzo. When you're driving around a vehicle and you're looking for a front end noise, there's my dog. You have an idea of what the front end components are, and how they are interacting with the suspension going up and down and the wheels rotating, because what components are there. And so you have a picture in your head as you're listening for a noise and driving it, right? And that helps you figure out what's wrong. But not everybody has that with electricity, right? Not everybody can visualize what's going on because you can't see it. But I think the scope is that window to help people out with it. So we make sure that when the students leave, they at least can use one, whether they will or not in the field. That's up to them or their shop, but at least they have it at that point.
So do you do like basic electrics with them, like fundamentals electrics? Is that part of your
It's part of the course. It's not the course that I teach. They've already done the basic electrical when they get to me. And then I do the like computer systems, sensors, inputs, networks, things like that. And that's where we introduce the scope, because it kind of goes along with that.
Reason I ask, I was playing around in the garage because part of my training offering, I'm expanding it to include all the fundamentals and things like that. There's a really good test you can do for voltage drop. So I set up a basic circuit and then just basically took one strand of copper wire. And then with the circuit active, if you get the scope and then run it across the wire, on a longer time base, you can see the voltage drop along a piece of wire.
Oh, no kidding.
That just helps you, understand that actually when the circuit's active, it's not exactly 12 volts here and 12 volts at the component. You've actually got a very small drop along the wire. So, essentially that's being consumed by the whole circuit. However, most of it's being consumed by the component.
Sure. That's interesting.
So, it was pretty cool when I got it to work. I had to play around with some settings though, because we're looking at a very, very small voltage drop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I did now, but yeah.
So, some demonstrations like that can really bring it home for somebody to see it. I do one with just a meter. We're talking about, checking a circuit loaded, making sure that it's on, doing voltage drop testing.
Yeah.
But that if you're checking for voltage on a circuit when there's no current flowing, you can really get thrown off by the numbers that you get. So I take a jump pack, it's got 12 volts from it. It's basically a battery. And I'll take just a regular voltmeter, just old fashioned voltmeter, which people still use those plenty of the time. And I'll attach the black lead of the meter to the black clamp of the jump pack. And I will take the red clamp from the jump pack and I'll touch the metal with my left hand. So I'm just making contact with my skin. And then I'll touch the end of the red lead of the meter with my right hand, and it'll show 12 volts on the meter through my body. And we measure the resistance of my body with the ohm meter, and it's like 1,000,000 ohms or something like that. And I'm just showing them like, hey, obviously I'm not going to conduct, any usable current through my body from this 12 volt jump pack. But if you were testing things like this in a car, it's going to show you 12 volts. And so that one really helps just to kind of drive it home. Like,
definitely,
you want to check while that current is there, that circuit is complete, there's current going through it. And, having demos like that are definitely powerful.
Yeah. The basic electrics course is, your basic electrics knowledge. You don't necessarily have to go on a training course to kind of get there, but that's probably one of the most important things to be able to understand before you start going into all the rest of it, like sensors and actuators and CAN bus and, all this other stuff. Yeah, because if you don't have like that kind of base understanding and kind of get it and be able to visualize it for yourself, the rest of it isn't going to make sense. Mm-hmm. The basics might, but if you start looking at faults and resistive short circuits and things like this, you're going to be looking at the readings on your scope or your meter and possibly questioning what's happening.
And getting to the point of doing stuff like network diagnosis. And I know you've got some videos on CAN bus and network stuff. And if you can set yourself up with the fundamentals of electric, once you get to something that's a little bit more complex, like a network, it's going to become easier to you because you have that foundation of the basics. I've watched a few of your videos on the network stuff and CAN bus. That's great stuff. And I know that's an area where technicians get hung up quite often too.
Big time. Yeah. So I did a few of those videos and they did all right. And they definitely perform well in search. So there's a lot of people asking the questions about the CAN bus diagnostics. And I think the last one I did was just like, five things to do to help you out with the CAN bus network faults. And, the number one thing for me is always that, the fault code read. So, after I started the channel, I'd get quite a few requests about CAN bus faults. People are having issues with faults. And, it'd be like, well, I've got this fault code stored. And you're like, whoa. If you're reading fault codes out of the network that you think's not okay, the network's got to be okay.
Right.
There's all these other little things that you can do. If you understand how the network operates, then you can quickly work out whether it's, at fault or not.
Sure.
Intermittent problems are kind of a different story. But if you say I've got a hard fault on my network, for most modern cars now, it's not going to do anything,
Right. Yeah.
Probably not even going to start the engine,
Uh-huh.
So, CAN bus, I think it's just keeping it simple, I think, for most of it. Mm-hmm. And I think what I do find is a lot of people are chasing CAN bus faults that aren't CAN bus faults.
Mm-hmm. I've done that myself, just gone down the rabbit hole of over analyzing the scope pattern. And I've come to find like when there's a problem, it stands out very clearly that there's a problem with the network. And if you think that little, that little bump in the voltage or whatever is your problem, it's most likely not.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Overanalyzing. Because, we tell people about these voltages on, the CAN bus networks. We're like, what is it? 3.6 and 1.4, or 3.5 and 1.5 or whatever, You test it on another car and it might be slightly different.
Yeah.
I think I was looking at one of my cars the other day, and one of the messages, the voltages were slightly different. But at the end of the day, is it getting that message across? CAN bus has been designed to be really robust. I've got this other video where I start dialing in short circuit resistance to it. Dialing it up.
Sure.
And, how much does it take before it kills it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can really dial it in before it's like, we're not talking anymore. So,
I did the same, not that exact thing, but like you were talking about with planting faults, I'll do that for my students sometimes out in the shop. Is let's plant a fault in this network and see if they can work their way through it. And I found with CAN bus stuff, it can take quite a bit of abuse. Like you're saying, like you can remove a terminating resistor. Like basically you're opening up the circuit on one end, and on certain vehicles, it'll still communicate. You can still talk to things with the scan tool, and it doesn't introduce the fault like you think it would. And you really have to go after it if you want to take down the network, as far as, shorting it to ground or whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
But robust is the word that I've heard used for CAN bus before. And it's very true. It does a surprisingly good job. For as often as we see faults with it, I think it's just because it's such a common system. But for the most part, considering the atmosphere that it lives in a car going down the road with all the electrical noise, it's pretty impressive that it can transfer as much information that it does accurately.
Yeah. And, it's got to be robust as well now. There's quite a few safety things kind of riding on these things. And don't they use it in planes as well?
I guess I'm not sure on that. I know there's a lot of machinery that uses it as well. Like farm equipment and things like that. It's used quite a bit outside of the automotive world as well.
Yeah. So it's got to be robust.
Definitely.
However, when it does go down, you've had it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what brands are over in the UK that you work on. Is there General Motors vehicles that are common over there?
So General Motors is pretty big now, yeah. So
okay, because they've
got some of the European brands.
Okay, because they have their CAN bus set up a little bit differently as compared to others, where they'll chain the modules together on the network, right? So if you have PCM, ABS, and body control, the ABS is kind of in the middle. And if you unplug the connector at the ABS, you're like opening up the entire network rather than...
Okay, so does it like go in ABS and then out ABS
essentially again? Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And they'll have that along the whole string of modules. And so anywhere along there, if one gets unplugged for whatever reason, like a connector's not seated properly, takes down, or it basically separates the network into two sections. Whereas, your traditional bus, if you unplug a module, that's just one leg of the CAN bus, and you lose that module. But
it's just like on a star, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the GM setup, and I don't know, I'm sure there's other manufacturers that use this, but I always have a different mindset when I go into those because of how they have it set up they call it a daisy chain connection.
So like FlexRay.
Is that how? I haven't done a whole lot with FlexRay. Is that how that is too?
Yeah, so FlexRay it's kind of easier though, because I don't think you're going to have more than three or four modules on one kind of string. But it goes straight through, and I think you should be able to test the resistance of that wire straight through the modules, and it should be just direct continuity.
Yep, same thing with those GM modules.
Yeah. So Audi have this other thing. I don't know if you've done much work with Audis before.
Not a ton, here and there. I did a little bit with the the most network on one a little while ago. That was interesting.
Right, yeah. Well, this for Canvas is a game changer. I don't know if they're still doing it because I'd imagine it costs quite a bit of money. However, different parts in the vehicles, I think on the earlier ones when I first started there, they'd have a like a connector block on the passenger side of the dashboard and then a connector block on the driver's side. So if you took the end of the dash off, there would be like a little connector block. And if you took it out, it would have, depending on how many networks it'd have, there'd be like 3 or 4 blocks of kind of connector that just connected all the network together.
I've seen that on some Volkswagens. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Might be on like Phaeton or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe some others. And then they have this special tool. So then you plug this tool back into the car and then you put that blanking plug back into the tool because the blanking plug's coded to the car. And you can literally go through and unplug each node individually.
Nice.
To actually narrow down faults. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. Rather than going in and cutting wires to find problems and stuff. But
Chrysler has that set up on their CAN bus stuff. I don't know what year they started, but I think it's like 15 and up, and they call it a star connector. And it's that, I don't know that they have a tool, maybe they do, but it's easy enough to go to that connector and just basically take legs off of the CAN bus. And then eventually if you got a short or whatever, it's a fantastic place if you want to divide up the circuit to find the fault of why it's getting taken down. Great testing location. So yeah, the more vehicles that have stuff like that, it's so easy. The old General Motors stuff had that for their class 2 networks where they'd have a splice pack. It's just a metal comb, and you could go to that comb, unplug it, and then just go down the line and test each leg of the circuit. So just knowing that stuff exists on the car is a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd have never worked for Audi before, I'd have never have known about that, And I think what is possible as well is you can get the connectors mixed up.
Oh, okay.
So, if you I think we used to do that sometimes on like the networks course or something, put the wrong one in the wrong side.
Okay.
Don't like it. In fact, I really enjoy that about the training role is actually putting faults on cars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what happens if?
Well, I'll tell you what,
sort this out.
that is a powerful learning tool for the person putting the fault in. And I figured that out as a teacher, is that breaking a car and breaking it in a way that it reacts in a specific manner is actually way more difficult than you think. And you really have to understand the system that you're dealing with in order to break it in a specific way. So I've actually introduced that as a project for my students. They actually just went through this past week on one where they get a car, they go through a system, and they have to plant a fault that presents a certain symptom. Like you break the car in this way so that it does this afterwards. And it's not easy. It is way more difficult than you think to do that. And then they have another student group go through it and try to figure out what's wrong. But that can, you learn so much about something just trying to get it to not work.
Yeah. And that was a big thing for like the MasterTech assessments as well. When we're writing these assessments, is trying to come up with faults that, are harder to find. Where you're not going to get a fault code that's going to lead you straight to it, or give you a guided test plan to follow, or trying to find these faults that are not so detectable. So they've actually got to prove that they can do the test and understand how the system works. But yeah, I do enjoy that, and I do that with my own car now, even though I drive it every day. For the videos, for the YouTube videos, so I'll put faults on that and be like, I'm pretty sure this will be okay.
I've definitely done some poking and prodding on my own vehicles before. We have a fleet of school cars too that have been donated to the school, so those ones obviously get worked on by the students, so they get beat up pretty good, but I'll do my own experiments and stuff. If I've got, a particular vehicle that I'm working on or struggling with, and maybe I got a school car that's similar, we'll mess around with it a little bit. So test subjects.
Yeah, it's good fun though. I do enjoy doing all that kind of stuff. So
very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what's your plans for the future with your your channel and your website. Where are you going to take this?
So we've got this we've got the oscilloscope training on there at the minute. As I mentioned earlier, I started writing that in November 2019, so it took me nearly a year to actually get it out we did like a pilot launch in October just to make sure that, people were interested in it, and it did quite well. So I've got so much more that I can, kind of offer people, who want it. So I'm probably going to start something like more of a low cost membership, where I can actually create training that people want when they need it.
Oh, okay.
And build it up that way rather than going for kind of a whole full course.
Sure.
It just takes so long. And then, just
do some custom training.
Yeah. Focus on some of those fundamentals. We've done some great work with the case studies on, people who've kind of joined Mechanic Mindset. They've sent some case studies in, and we've had a look at them. We'll be able to kind of make a lesson out of that. Brandon came on a couple of weeks ago, Brandon Steckler.
Oh, yeah.
To do some kind of in-cylinder pressure diagnostic stuff. And one of the guys that was on the course, he'd sent in a waveform a few weeks before that. And then we're like, right, we'll use that on the call with Brandon. So it turned out the guy that sent in the waveform used to work with Brandon.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So they were like good friends. So that was, want to do some kind of more of that kind of thing as well, get more people together. We've got lots of experts around us, and, trying to make everyone, as accessible as possible, really, and just, try and make everyone's life a little bit easier when you're back in the workshop, because cars are getting harder to fix.
No kidding. They're not getting any easier, that's for sure.
No, that's it. And, we've got a lot of challenges coming, with electric vehicles, the ADAS things growing, connectivity, online vehicles and things like this. It's going in, quite a different direction. So, I think for some of this stuff, you might not have a choice, but need the manufacturer's factory tools to kind of talk to it and fix it.
Mm-hmm. It's some of these newer vehicles, that would see the 2020s or 21s or whatever. And I don't see them on a super regular basis, but when I am, I'm looking at the complexity of what's going on these things. And I'm just imagining 20 years down the road when these are in all the shops, because that's what's on the road. It's going to be a really tough transition for certain technicians and certain shops to be able to service these things. Just basic stuff is going to be really tough. So there's going to have to be a big change somehow or another, whether, some shops are not going to make it. They're not going to stick around. But that other people that are investing in themselves and their education can be really successful with this. And, it's something where you can right now, but in the future, I think you're going to be able to make a lot of money if you're, you got some skills and knowledge around this and be able to fix these complex things. You're going to be sought after and it'd be very successful. So it's worth investing in yourself and getting as much training as you can find. That small amount, paying for a course or subscription or whatever, it pays you back so much if you can apply it in the real world.
Yeah. And then even just invest in your time, there's a lot of things that you can find out on the internet. The only thing you've got to be careful of is it's not all as accurate as we'd like it to be.
Yeah, you got to sift through some stuff, especially YouTube can be that way for sure.
Yeah. So and it's invest in yourself. That's I'm still investing in myself in different ways. I far from knowing it all, still learn something every day. I think that's what you've got to do, really. And, if you don't, search for something, find it out.
Yeah. The more you learn, the more you'll realize that you don't know. So at least that's how I feel. It's almost like I gain more knowledge, but I feel dumber every day. So
yeah. And I actually, because of course I finish my full-time job this month, and we're going kind of full-time freelancing. It's delivering technical training, and it will give me more time with mechanic mindset.
Okay.
I surveyed my students in the UK, just asking what they thought about a face-to-face training offering from me, and really just getting some comments, some verbatim feedback of what they thought about technical training and some of the things that might put them off. And it's interesting that a couple of people had put that, they were put off by coming on a training course because of, embarrassment, or, asking the wrong questions, or feeling like they don't know enough already. And that's, I suppose it might say a lot about the courses that they've been on before, but I think it's important to, remember there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, there is. It's the one that doesn't get asked.
Yes. Yes, so, exactly.
So, you've got to ask those questions, because 9 times out of 10, when that trainer stands at the front of the room going, okay, yeah, does everyone understand? And, you look around and everyone's nodding and you're just, nodding along.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that you don't understand, you can guarantee that, there's a handful of people in that room that don't understand either.
Yep.
Or even all of them.
Yep.
We just take that brave one to go, well, what did you mean by that? And then everyone goes, yeah. What?
I'm glad he asked that. Oh,
yeah.
Boy. Yep. No, that's 100%. I felt that way as a student in class, and I know 100% that's how it is with my students in class. I just talked about this with somebody on a few episodes ago, but I'll have everybody at the end of a presentation or an explanation jot down a question on a piece of paper with no name on it, just your question. Everybody pass them to the front, and I just read the questions and I answer them. This is after I've explained this stuff. And always, every single time, I'll get multiple of the same question. But if I were to just ask everybody, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah,
and just sit back and there's nothing.
If you're working with the younger guys and that, ask them to write it on, screw it up, and then throw it to the front.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea.
And then as well, you don't know who it came from as well, so it's like anonymous.
Sure.
We've kind of done that for like reviews, and if we've got a course that spans a few days, okay, we'll have a review the next day. Okay, write it on the paper, and but we do it more of as, okay, well, who can answer it, or putting people on the spot a little bit. It's like, right, we'll pick one up then. What have you got? And that was more of, okay, can we remember what we did yesterday? So, right. that was interesting. But there were their own questions, so it wasn't the trainers coming out with the difficult ones. But that then also helps you as a trainer. Okay, this is what they remembered.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they remember that?
Or this is what they didn't understand. I need to find a better or different way to explain this.
Yeah. So, and that's what I do love as well. The kind of process of learning and the different ways we learn and how we get people engaged, and how you can sit through a 2-hour movie and give it your undivided attention and remember that stuff for months or years to come. But, you go on a training course and a few months later, it's, what course was it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah. That you could sit through something like that. And yeah, like you say, you're completely engrossed and focused on that and it affects you. But yeah, you got, 10, 15 minutes into a lecture of some sort and you're falling asleep. And that, I think in a lot of cases, not everyone, but a lot of cases, that is on the instructor or the trainer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
To engage properly. And that there's a lot of methods to do that. But I've found more and more just me up there talking about something, explaining something is exactly what's putting them to sleep. Not everybody, but certain students. And you have to do other methods of engagement to get them, focused and watching that movie.
You can't take it personally, because let's be honest, I've been in a lot of meetings and a lot of presentations and stuff like that. And then when they just go on like that, you lose focus, We don't stay engaged for that long, That's why they make these movies the way they do, and TV programs and things like that, to keep your attention, You notice there's always something moving. Or, it won't stay on the same thing for very long, because it's like, oh, what's happening now? And it just keeps you locked on the TV, So I think we need to be a bit more like that. And
Yeah, I need to construct my courses like a Netflix program. Okay.
Yeah, a series.
Put some thought to that.
But this is what it challenges us to do then, doesn't it?
Yeah,
as
definitely.
trainers, it's okay, well, how can we keep them engaged? What can we do to make it a bit more kind of interesting? And then, they'll remember it, and that's our job done then, So
I like that. Yeah. I'm gonna put some thought towards that. I've never really looked at it that way, but I think there's something you could definitely take from that as a teacher for sure. So yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you spending your time with me today. This was it's good to meet you first time. And one more time before we go though, make sure to list your YouTube channel and your website. I'll put it in the show notes, but just for everybody listening.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So for Mechanic Mindset on YouTube, and then the website is mechanicmindset.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Darren. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure joining you. Great talking.
Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. I want to give one more big thank you to Darren for spending his time with me today. It was really great getting to chat with him and hear from someone on the other side of the planet. That's pretty cool. Make sure to check out the show notes and check out Mechanic Mindset and check out all the training that he has available. But I'd also like to thank everybody for listening. Really appreciate it. Make sure to reach out if you have any comments or suggestions or questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But with that all out of the way, let's all get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.